We are live. You were recording. You were good to go.
All right, cool.
Take it away, bud.
So just to preface this, I'm no way an expert in this. I did some research for about a week. And my original idea was to demonstrate how insecure SMS is. And it kind of led me down a rabbit hole, which I will then talk about. But before we get into that, who am I? My name is Nicholas Graysa. I am a senior CSEC student. This is my last semester here. I was on the RIT varsity swim team. Like many people in RIT Sec, I don't get it, or just swimmers in general. But I am now a swammer, the past tense. I do not swim anymore. Okay, so SS7, what is it? Well, what it stands for is the signaling system number 7. And think of it, if I had to relate it, it's basically like the IP stack, right? There are different layers, but this isn't Wi-Fi, this isn't internet. This is more of along the lines of like ham radios and like walkie-talkies, things like that. So I will try to relate it back to the IP stack because I know that's something we're all familiar with, and it's something that really helped me to understand this, was relating it back to the IP stack. So the G's. We've all heard about 5G, I think, right? Well, there's 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. The way I related this, the IP stack, was think of the different Wi-Fi protocols. You have A, B, G, N, AC, the Wi-Fi 6 now. And they kind of all gotten faster with their new generations, right? And more secure. Like there was TKIP, if some people are familiar with wireless. It's not my strong suit, but I know that's a thing. And so 2G is basically unencrypted. They do have an encryption, I will say, but you can crack it in real time, so I'm not sure if you should call that encryption. But the rest of them they're pretty okay. It's encrypted, so even if you intercept the traffic, you don't know what's going on, but there are ways to get around it, and we'll talk about that later. So before we get into the cool stuff, we have to talk about some vocabulary. Some of these are not so important, but I threw it in there because if you want to get more into this, then these are some terms you want to know. The IMSI is basically an identifier stored in your SIM card, and this is how cellular networks will you'll prove to them that you're a paying customer, and they can give you service based on that. The TMSI is basically a temporary version of that. So it's trying to hide who you are, I guess. I don't know. You can still relate it back to the IMSI. So it's kind of like an obscurity thing more than it is a security thing. IME, again, just another like unique identifier, and we'll show how these are used later on, but I just wanted to go over them. I'm not sure how to say this, key, I'm not too sure, but it's basically a way to authenticate who you are. The base station will send you a challenge, and you have to use this key to solve the challenge. MCC, MNC, these are things that your provider will have in it, because there's different providers. The Verizon and AT&T, I'll just use those two. They're the pretty big ones. How do they differentiate between the two of them? Well, with these. Cell ID, not really too important. The location area code is pretty important. I'll go a little more in depth, but the way that calls are routed to your phone is based on your physical location, because the cell tower needs to know where you are and which cell tower you're connected to in order to give you the call that you're receiving. And then base station, BTS, pretty important. I think we all know what those are, the 5G towers that are giving everybody corona. That was a joke. Just want to make that clear. So what are the types of attacks that we can do? Communication interception. So like I said, the 2G is all unencrypted. If you intercept it, you get all their traffic. Denial of service. service downgrade. So remember I said there are ways around getting around encryption with 3G, 4G. You can downgrade that service. And then location tracking. So again, this is something that is used in cell phones because they need to know where to send you your phone call. There's someone on the other end waiting to get in contact with you. So IMSI catchers, if you remember that term that I went over, these are also synonymous with CSS, not cascading style sheets. That's something different. In terms of mobile communications, these are the cell site simulators. So they're basically just mobile vans that are harvesting your IMSI numbers. And one of the reasons, and one of the people that do this is law enforcement. So the motivation to do this is to get around some legal loopholes. If they have your phone number and they want to track you, they need a subpoena from a judge in order to get more information from the mobile carrier. But say they got your IMSI number, well, they don't need anything from a judge. There's no legislation on that, from what I've heard. And that's one of the reasons why they do this. CSS is basically they capture IMSI numbers, and they'll just abort the connection and they just keep harvesting all these numbers. But what they can also do is communication interception. And it's basically a man-in-the-middle attack. It just relays information back and forth between your cell phone and the base station. So as you can see here, the CSS, the van in this picture, tries to act like a phone. The base station asks for their ID, and then the van contacts the phone to get the ID, sends it back and forth. The key is used to authenticate the user, and the rest is history. Now all your traffic is being intercepted. I just want a quick pause for questions because I know I went over a lot of vocab. If everybody has the Twitch stream up, just let me know if there are any questions. Nothing at the moment? All right, cool. We'll keep going. So denial of service and downgrading. Base stations basically tell the phone what to use. So if you're that base station, you can tell the phone whatever, and it has to comply with it. So say an attacker wants to intercept your traffic, well, they can just pump a bunch of white noise into the 3G and 4G frequencies, and then your phone automatically defaults to 2G because it'll get whatever it can, right? And if a phone is connected to the CSS and is using LTE, well, the base station can send an error code that'll basically say, well, LTE is not available in this area, so your phone just shuts it off, and the only way to turn it back on is to reboot your phone. So that's pretty cool, right? There's another error code that'll just turn off cell data altogether. And again, the only way to revert it back is to reboot your entire phone, which is a little scary. Like whatever the base station says, your phone just does, and that's it. And I think one of the reasons for this is that the SS7 protocol was written in 1973, I believe. And if you're familiar with the movie War Games, where they hack into the nuclear weapons facility, that was made in the 1980s. So this is before even that. So you can imagine the amount of issues. Yes, John?
So you're saying you never restart your phone?
No, you should restart your phone. You might actually get more service because what if they turn off LTE? They say, oh, LTE is not they lie to you. Yeah, okay. So they can downgrade what you're using and then intercept your traffic, which is unencrypted, or they can just pump a bunch of white noise and deny the service altogether, and then your phone defaults back to the basic level. So LTE. Instead of looking for the highest signal, as long as it reaches a certain threshold, it'll say, that's good enough, I'll just connect to it. And then once it connects to that base station, the base station sends a list of known neighbors, so other base stations in the area, of what the phone can connect to. So that's pretty cool. Like, it saves battery. Your phone isn't out searching for these other base stations. So if you move and you have a list of known neighbors that you can connect to and possibly get a better signal. The only problem with that is LTE uses a few different frequencies, and these different frequencies have a list of priority. So, and you can find out the frequency, like that's a known thing. If you have the right equipment, you can just figure out the frequency that the base station is using, and then you can use a higher priority frequency than that base station, and the phone will automatically switch over to you. So that's pretty cool, pretty hot. What else? Yeah, regardless of signal strength, the frequency is what matters. And this is all unencrypted, so you can monitor this. And then once the phone connects to the CSS, you can downgrade the service to 2G, and it's game over. So now on to location tracking. So again, this is what law enforcement uses, but you also have to think, what about APTs? Like, Russia could probably do this. They have plenty of resources, and they have the know-how and money and equipment to do so. So it's kind of gets your wheels spinning in your head. Maybe Big Brother is always watching, but I'll let you decide that for yourself. So there are two types of tracking. There's presence testing and fine-grained location. Presence testing is just like figuring out which base station you're connected to. So that'll give you like a general area because you have to be in a certain proximity to that base station in order to be connected to it. But nowadays, most phones have GPS signal. I mean, can get GPS coordinates. So it makes it easier just to send exact locations to the base station to tell them where you are. And so you can get exact coordinates of people's phones. So a little more into this. You don't need a CSS for this. Phones constantly are getting broadcast RRC messages, so radio resource control messages. And it's just saying like, oh, you have a phone call coming to you. Reach out to us and we'll route you that phone call, or a text message even. So it's doing this, it doesn't send it to a specific phone. It just broadcasts it to all phones that are connected to that base station. And then it's up to the phone to decide if it's the receiver of that and then reach out. So with with LTE, I believe, it does this more than just the base station that you're connected to. It'll do it to your last known locations. So what you can do is spam them. Yep, spam them with phone calls and disconnect immediately, and the person on the phone won't know anything. And if you do this and you know when you send these phone calls, you can track the RRC messages and see like what their IMSI number is and where they are. So pretty scary. Well, you can know what base station they're connected to. The scary part is with GPS coordinates. So LTE does this a little better and uses GPS coordinates because it's easier. Your phone knows exactly where it is. So why not just tell that to the base station? So in conclusion, with the 2G, you can have unencrypted conversations. And even if it is encrypted, it's easily breakable. I'm not sure if 3G is the same way. I was watching a video from Black Hat, and he said that 3G was better to use, obviously, but that video was like from 2013. So there could be new things coming out that I just don't know about. And that's one of the issues that I was having with this, is that it's not a very researched topic. And we might we'll get into that a little later, I think in the next slide. Oh wait, no, it's this one. So why haven't we fixed this? This is just my opinion. You can have your own. I want to make that clear. I think cell networks probably know about this. Law enforcement knows about this, but why would they want to do anything about it? They can track criminals or whomever they want. Why would they want to change it? Again, I want to be clear, that's my own opinion. I have no proof of this, but you know, I have to assume that they know what's going on. And it can be very dangerous for people to intercept your calls. And there was a documented attack in Germany in 2017 where most days companies are sending you one-time passwords over SMS. And if you can intercept that and get their one-time password, they did this to a bank and got access to their bank accounts and stole their money. So are there any more questions in chat? Yeah, what's up?
Recommendation to place a bottom text next time or something.
Bottom text?
I think he was right. Yeah. No, go for it. Yeah. Anyways, do you know of any plans to like roll out 2G? Just because it sounds like it's for compatibility reasons. But
Yeah.
It sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, and especially now we have so many more generations after that. Like, do we need 2G still? I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I don't know enough, but I would think that we have the infrastructure available to get rid of 2G, but who knows? And I know it built into the 2G protocol, like specification, you're supposed to get a message when your communication is unencrypted, but they did this and people were annoyed by the messages that you would constantly get, that they just turned it off. It's like some bit in the SIM card. They just have it set so you don't get error messages, because they would call the network and be like, hey, what's up with my phone? I keep getting this message. But also I know I think India, they're not allowed to have encrypted cell communications, so they would just constantly get this message all the time. So, yeah.
One more question.
Yep.
So when I hear a lot about 4G security, I hear a lot about a Stingray. Is that just an IMSI interceptor or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was made by L3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like just a specific type of ISMI.
yes, I remember seeing that name in my research that I did. And I want to shout out to Joe Graham, because he sent me this article that was fantastic, and most of the information I got from that. But they did mention Stingray in that. So that's something that I can look further into. Anything else? Cool.
Yes. All right, you guys don't want to hear the news? You can just leave.